All right, let's continue to this now. The African Astronomical Society's 2025 Conference and General Assembly is underway at UNISA, bringing together experts, researchers and policymakers from across Africa and beyond. Now, this dynamic hybrid event celebrates Africa's growing contributions to astronomy, featuring cutting-edge scientific advancements, impactful outreach and exciting youth initiatives. To speak more on this, let's now welcome Dr. Sinenhlanhla Sikhosana, lecturer at UKZN and AfAS Executive Committee member. Thank you so much, ma'am, for your time on the show. So this is an annual event, we understand. We also understand, as we've just been reading in the intro, that it is attended by scientists, students, educators, as well as international partners. Just give us a sense then of the importance of an event like this, and perhaps how Africa's astronomy community is also aiding and advancing, in this particular sector globally.
Thank you. Good afternoon, and good afternoon to the viewers at home. So as you mentioned, our AfAS conference is annual. So since 2021, we've been having these conferences annually. And again, as you mentioned, what is unique about this conference is that it is not only just scientists who are discussing their discoveries, but we also bring in outreach component where we have high school teachers and we have people in the outreach sector coming in and also having discussions, and as well we have policymakers. And so what this actually does is that we have now all the players in the field of astronomy in one environment, and so we are able to have these cross discussions, because to advance astronomy in Africa, we need all these people to play a role. And again, AfAS has been also key in playing a role in making sure that astronomy in Africa, first of all, is speaking in one voice, and that it's connected, and that we are able to collaborate as African astronomers first, and then that we are able to take the work that we are doing in Africa to the global astronomy community.
And how much of, South Africa's premier astronomical tools will take center stage in this conference? Here I'm talking about SALT, as well as SKA, better known as the Square Kilometre Array. How much of that is just one of South Africa's beacon, astronomical projects too, that is used to advance, particularly in this space?
Yes, of course. You mentioned two of probably the most biggest instrument within Africa, within Southern Africa, and they've played a huge role, maybe, let me say, not only in this conference, but in advancing astronomy in Africa, because having our own instruments, so African-owned instruments, allows us to advance our research. And then in terms of the conference itself, we actually have sessions where we'll have people that are coming from the Southern African Largest Telescope, SALT, and they'll be giving hands-on tutorials on how people can apply to observe, so to use the telescope for their science. And then we also have SKAO represented. So this is the Square Kilometre Array Observatory.
All right, Dr. Sikhosana, apologies for my interruption. We'll come back to our discussion. We just want to take our viewers back to an earlier event, but let's now take you back to our interview, highlighting, of course, the African Astronomical Society's 2025 Conference and General Assembly, currently underway in UNISA today, bringing various experts on the field. We are still in conversation with Dr. Sinenhlanhla Sikhosana, a lecturer at UKZN and AfAS Executive Committee. Thank you so much for your patience, Dr. Sikhosana, and apologies, of course, for that interjection early on. But essentially, where we left our conversation is that, of course, this is an important conference from a scientific perspective too, but also from an innovative aspect when we talk about astronomy and what South Africa and Africa's role is. The question I was asking you you is, how central will conversations around the Southern African Large Telescope, or SALT, and the Square Kilometre Array, SKA, are going to be in this conference, because they are largely, South Africa's two premier tools in this particular industry?
Yes, so I will just continue as I was explaining that. So we had a session yesterday, and this afternoon we're actually going to have a session where astronomers that are based at the Southern African Largest Telescope, SALT, will take scientists from across Africa. And of course, we have also international astronomers visiting us. So they'll take us through on how one can apply for time to observe using SALT, and so how the tools are available for the global community to use. And then yesterday, we actually had a session that was hosted by the Square Kilometre Array Observatory, whose headquarters are in the UK, but we also have offices here in Cape Town. Now, this session was very crucial because it gives us updates on the progress of building the SKA, as we know that it is co-hosted by South Africa and Australia. So we got to know updates of what is happening in Australia and in South Africa as well. But also just to mention that in South Africa, we have Meerkat, which is a precursor of the SKA. And so we also have people from Meerkat who are talking about the science, might I say that the excellent science that has been done by Meerkat, and the students also are presenting results that are coming from data that was collected by Meerkat, which is a proudly South African instrument.
And just speak to us, about just the research focus, particularly as you mentioned, the Meerkat, the precursor of SKA, and other things that you are currently doing, particularly under, the SAAO in this country, that has further left and further illuminated, rather, just some of the challenges that we ought to still investigate in this country that will impact, globally.
Okay, so Meerkat, which is a radio instrument under SARAO, actually has put South African research, and might I say African research, on a global scale. And so you will find astronomers a lot of times referring to Meerkat as one of the best instruments in the world because of the kind of sensitivity that it has. And so we're able to do some science that was not been done before. So, for example, there was a survey where we were observing the galactic plane, and we now are finding new structures that were not seen by instruments that previously existed. But just to touch on some of the challenges that we are still experiencing, and now this is to speak to a broader public, and maybe to touch on an aspect that here we are also discussing, and maybe the outreach aspect, is that if you go, so I'm from a village, and if you go to the village that I come from, which is Kambu, in Harding, and you speak to just the people, they will not know about the instruments that exist within South Africa, and astronomy as a career even. And so I think the challenge is there is to be able to take this amazing science that we are doing with these world-class instruments to South Africa, to the common South African citizen, and make them understand how South Africa and Africa actually is playing a role in global astronomy.
All right. Thank you so much for your time, Dr. Sinenhlanhla Sikhosana, a lecturer at UKZN and AfAS Executive Committee member, of course, talking to us more about that conference that is happening in UNISA today.